Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. I will do the best I can with this. I have a little bit of a swelling in my tongue after dinner this evening, so I am not sure that my pronunciation will quite make the grade, but I intend to read some more poems by William Butler Yeats. I posted a video yesterday of some poems, and actually there was a delay in posting it because I was not really all that happy when I finished it. I wasn't happy with the poems that wound up being my selection. It was kind of a spontaneous thing, and I plunged right into it. I wanted to do another video on Yeats, and it just wasn't setting with me. So finally I went back, gave it the run through, and decided, what the heck, I'll put it up. This book, the collected works of W.B. Yeats, the complete poems, is a book that I am not thoroughly familiar with. My preferred vehicle for a poem by William Butler Yeats is this collection. Pretty much everything that I love most is in this. I have no idea when I bought this book. It looks pristine because it's hardly been looked. It's shelved behind other things. But since I had it out, I'm thinking, well, I should be going through it and just giving old WB a second glance, so to speak. The ones that I know from here are sort of indelible, and I am enjoying giving the rest of his poems another look, enjoying them, although I am tending to stick with my initial reactions or responses to his poems. It's an interesting thing. I left a comment on a video today done by Matt Wall, and somehow we talked a little bit in the comments section about the poet E.E. Cummings. And somehow in the course of that, I realized that E.E. Cummings is another poet, like many other poets for me, a poet of whom I really only need a handful of poems, maybe 10 at the most. I could take those 10 poems and just let the rest of it go. There are a good number of poets like that. I would say probably John Keats, Wilfred Owen, and I'm just saying 10 as a round number. I haven't really counted them. It's just an offhand or off the cuff figure. But I can tell you that William Butler Yeats is certainly not one of those figures. Hence this video, and I could see it becoming a series of videos. There is just so much in his body of work. I'm not saying there are no clunkers in here. Of course, any poet's complete works will have clunkers. But I'm very happy to have this and should put it more prominently on my shelf, I think. A nice slim paperback serves me, as does, say, my Dover edition of John Keats. You don't really need anything more than that. And in some poets' cases, you can just rely on what you have in your good general poetry anthology. So Matthew Arnold, for example, there's only one poem, and you probably can guess that. Other poets, is it Richard Lovelace? Maybe a couple. What is the other guy? Cranshaw, something like that. Uh, just the Norton anthology suffices for me. You do not have to read everything by every poet. We, as writers, have to follow our muse throughout the course of our lives, but in almost no condition could any of us expect our work to receive the kind of attention that some solid readers on BookTube, for example, tend to give the works that they read. Some of these Library of America poetry collections, for example. I mean, it's an honor if one is a poet, I suppose, to have something like that. But there are really few poets of whom one must read the entire body of work. Shakespeare, of course, being the obvious example, though not probably the only one in English. And even with Shakespeare, the narrative poems maybe are not so critical. But of course, I should walk that back a little bit. I don't consider Shakespeare as a poet per se. I consider him as a dramatist, but that's getting into a whole nother field. Now, I quoted myself, and so I'm going to spoil your experience with William Butler Yeats by, Dylan Thomas said, that was the jam, now comes the pill. Well, I'm going to give you the pill first, because I made a quote in that past video of one of my sonnets, and so I'm going to, I mangled the quote, and so I thought I would give you the poem just so that you know what I was talking about, if you happen to have seen that video. So this is sonnet number 60. Then this is love. Young men, go seek it not. No, better to stake out your hermitage in some forsaken spot with single cot than to be bowed to love that is the rage. My warning this, though ye may never heed, God don't I know, what our experience has taught to us to tell, who in our greed to capture love gave up all innocence. We old, our words seem folly to the young, until unto their own decrepitude they are matured, whereat the song as sung by age strikes out in terror thrice renewed. I never any more read poetry, since my life's utter change she wrought in me. That statement was true, generally speaking, broadly speaking, but there have always been exceptions, so I do occasionally dip into a poetry book for some specific purpose or another, such as making a video. Now, let us get on with Mr. Yeats, shall we? I am sure that most of these can be found in my little selection, but I'm trying to have a go through this book. So let us see what we have. The first one is very famous. I'm guessing that this book is somewhat chronological. So this would be an early one. Down by the Sally Gardens. Down by the Sally Gardens, my love and I did meet. She passed the Sally Gardens with little snow-white feet. She bid me take love easy as the leaves grow on the tree. But I, being young and foolish, with her would not agree. In a field by the river, my love and I did stand, and on my leaning shoulder she laid her snow-white hand. She bid me take life easy, as the grass grows on the weirs. But I was young and foolish, and now am full of tears. Reminds one of that Houseman poem. Loveliest of trees, the cherry now, what is it, is hung with blooms along the bough, or something like that. I'm sure Houseman's day will come on this channel. Oh, and another anthology piece, The Lake Isle of Innisfree. I will arise and go now, and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin build there, of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, a hive for the honey bee, and live alone in the bee-loud glade. And I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of the morning to where the cricket sings. There midnight's all a glimmer, and noon a purple glow, and evening full of the linnet's wings. I will arise and go now, for always night and day I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavement's gray. I hear it in the deep heart's core. One conjures up an image of Yeats setting down his copy of Henry David Thoreau and writing that. The pity of love. A pity beyond all telling is hid in the heart of love. The folk who are buying and selling the clouds on their journey above, the cold, wet winds ever blowing, and the shadowy hazel grove, where mouse-gray waters are flowing, threaten the head that I love. Of course, in our day, we know that the folk who are buying and selling are threatening all that we love, potentially big time. This video is being recorded in the first month of the Trump regime, the second Trump regime in the United States, as the democracy is faltering. When you are old. When you are old and gray and full of sleep, and nodding by the fire, take down this book and slowly read, and dream of the soft look your eyes had once, and of their shadows deep. How many loved your moments of glad grace, and loved your beauty with love false or true. But one man loved the pilgrim soul in you, and loved the sorrows of your changing face. And bending down beside the glowing bars, murmur a little sadly how love fled, and paced upon the mountains overhead, and hid his face amid a crowd of stars. The lamentation of the old pensioner. Although I shelter from the rain under a broken tree, my chair was nearest to the fire in every company that talked of love or politics ere time transfigured me. Though lads are making pikes again for some conspiracy, and crazy rascals rage their fill at human tyranny, my contemplations are of time that has transfigured me. There's not a woman turns her face upon a broken tree, and yet the beauties that I loved are in my memory. I spit into the face of time that has transfigured me. A bit of a dramatic last thought there. Reminds one of that Crazy Jane poem. He thinks of those who have spoken evil of his beloved. Half close your eyelids, loosen your hair, and dream about the great and their pride. They have spoken against you everywhere, but weigh this song with the great and their pride. I made it out of a mouthful of air. Their children's children shall say they have lied. One, of course, can easily tie that to our present day would-be overlords. Love, of course, will always thwart those who are buying and selling. The old men admiring themselves in the water. I heard the old men say, everything alters, and one by one we drop away. They had hands like claws, and their knees were twisted like the old thorn trees by the waters. I heard the old men say, all that's beautiful drifts away like the waters. Oh, I missed one here. He wishes for the cloths of heaven. Had I the heavens embroidered cloths, and wrought with golden and silver light, the blue and the dim and the dark cloths of night and light and the half-light, I would spread the cloths under your feet, but I, being poor, have only my dreams. I have spread my dreams under your feet. Tread softly, because you tread on my dreams. No second Troy. Why should I blame her that she filled my days with misery, or that she would of late have taught to ignorant men most violent ways, or hurled the little streets upon the great, had they but courage equal to desire? What could have made her peaceful with a mind that nobleness made simple as a fire, with beauty like a tightened bow, a kind that is not natural in an age like this, being high and solitary and most stern? Why, what could she have done, being what she is? Was there another Troy for her to burn? And now here's a poem that is sort of a poet's poem, the kind of poem which lies dear to a poet's heart. all things can tempt me. All things can tempt me from this craft of verse. One time it was a woman's face, or worse, the seeming needs of my fool-driven land. Now nothing but comes readier to the hand than this accustomed toil. When I was young, I had not given a penny for a song, did not the poet sing it with such airs that one believed he had a sword upstairs. Yet would be now, could I but have my wish, colder and dumber and deafer than a fish. And next, a poem which has long rested in my memory. I do not have a lot of poems taken down that way. At one time I thought that I could retrieve the bulk of the poems of John Keats were I pressed to do so. I don't think that would be the case now. This poem once came to my lips as easily as, oh, the Pledge of Allegiance or the Lord's Prayer. Now I might have to think a little bit to pull this one across the threshold. But it, regardless, is a lovely poem. Brown Penny. I whispered, I am too young, and then I am old enough, wherefore I threw a penny to find out if I might love. Go and love, young man, if the lady be young and fair. Ah, penny, brown penny, brown penny, I am looped in the loops of her hair. And the penny sang up in my face, there is nobody wise enough to find out all that is in it, for he would be thinking of love that is looped in the loops of her hair, till the loops of time had run. Ah, penny, brown penny, brown penny, one cannot begin it too soon. The poems in this edition are numbered. This is number 123. Beggar to beggar cried. Time to put off the world and go somewhere and find my health again in the sea air. Beggar to beggar cried, being frenzy struck, and make my soul before my pate is bare. And get a comfortable wife and house to rid me of the devil in my shoes. Beggar to beggar cried, being frenzy struck, and the worse devil that is between my thighs. And though I'd marry with a comely lass, she need not be too comely, let it pass. Beggar to beggar cried, being frenzy struck, but there's a devil in a looking glass. Nor should she be too rich, because the rich are driven by wealth as beggars by the itch. Beggar to beggar cried, being frenzy struck, and cannot have a humorous, happy speech. And there I'll grow respected at my ease, and here amid the garden's nightly peace. Beggar to beggar cried, being frenzy struck, the wind-blown clamor of the barnacle geese. Is not that poem an outright condemnation of all of the high public officials that we have in the United States government right now? Indeed, it is. because the rich are driven by wealth as beggars by the itch. What a tragic lot to have consigned our future and our well-being to such a brood of rascals, eh? A coat. I made my song a coat, covered with embroideries, out of old mythologies, from heel to throat. But the fools caught it, wore it in the world's eyes, as though they'd wrought it. Song, let them take it, for there's more enterprise in walking naked. My tongue caught a little bit there. Let me just read that one again. A coat. I made my song a coat, covered with embroideries, out of old mythologies, from heel to throat. But the fools caught it, wore it in the world's eyes, as though they'd wrought it. Song, let them take it, for there's more enterprise in walking naked. The thing is, anything we do will find somebody to take and capitalize upon. I had a teacher, Yoma Gray, in school who at least once a week grew livid in front of the class because there was a United Airlines commercial which had taken a scene from Shakespeare's King Lear, I think where the king is carrying Cordelia, and somehow they turned it into an ad for United Airlines, and she grew enraged every time she thought of it. There is no stopping men's baseness. However, we as right just must continue upon our way. Our writing is for us and possibly for our immediate peers. The future will have to get along. To a young beauty. Dear fellow artist, why so free? With every sort of company, with every Jack and Jill. Choose your companions from the best. Who draws a bucket with the rest soon topples down the hill. You may that mirror for a school be passionate, not bountiful, as common beauties may, who were not born to keep in trim with old Ezekiel's cherubim, but those of Beauvarlais. I know what wages beauty gives, how hard a life her servant lives, yet praise the winter's gone. There is not a fool can call me friend, and I may dine at journey's end with Landor and with Donne. You know, I've thought a little bit more about that comment that I had. Somebody said, oh, looks like you've slipped away into TDS. I had to look it up. No, it's not tardive dyskinesia. It means Trump derangement syndrome. It's a catchphrase that these lost souls have coined to distance themselves a little bit, to give themselves a buffer zone between their own iniquitous designs, conscious or subconscious, and the actual impact of their devious dreams. It reminds me of when one is driving, one is willing to get all upset and cut people off and do all those things that one wouldn't do in person. Of course, many of us have learned to ameliorate that kind of rage, and we try not to go there. But the technology sort of allows for that. One doesn't see, generally speaking, a person pushing their shopping cart in the grocery store in the same way, although I have noticed it is even beginning to happen, jamming in front of the next car and all of that kind of thing. Behaviors that one would not dare to do in person. What was the? Well, I won't go into the play about Kenyatta here, but what did I call it? TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. That's what it says. And what you realize that this user, this commenter, is able to do with that little acronym is distance himself from what he is saying. He is, in effect, saying to me, you are deranged. But he would not have the guts to say something like that to me in person. He does not have the guts to out and out speak what he is feeling, probably because he knows deep down that it is a fancy, it is made up, it is a distortion, and any such distortion is, of course, a self-distortion. He is pretending something about himself which cannot hold water. I, of course, have lived a life which is fully documented, even before YouTube. So myself has been fairly thoroughly documented. Time can judge. Oh my God. TDS. One must laugh. The scholars. Bald heads, forgetful of their sins. Old, learned, respectable bald heads edit and annotate the lines that young men tossing on their beds rhymed out in love's despair to flatter beauty's ignorant ear. All shuffle there, all cough in ink, all wear the carpet with their shoes, all think what other people think, all know the man their neighbor knows. Lord, what would they say did their Catullus walk that way? Let me read that one again and think about the thinking that goes on in the halls of Trumplandia. Bald heads forgetful of their sins, old, learned, respectable bald heads edit and annotate the lines that young men tossing on their beds rhymed out in love's despair to flatter beauty's ignorant ear. Now here's the part focus on. All shuffle there, all cough in ink, all wear the carpet with their shoes, all think what other people think, all know the man their neighbor knows. Lord, what would they say did their Catullus walk that way? These denizens of Trumplandia have all become sort of a nondescript blob, a non-sun blob, to quote an old poem that I recall. Yeah, there is no Catullus there, let us say. One need not be Catullus. One just need be one's self. This is the poem that should break the internet, you know. Here it comes. The Cat and the Moon. The cat went here and there, and the moon spun round like a top, and the nearest kin of the moon, the creeping cat, looked up. Black Minnaloushe stared at the moon, for wander and wail as he would. The pure cold light in the sky troubled his animal blood. Minnaloushe runs in the grass, lifting his delicate feet. Do you dance, Minnaloushe? Do you dance? When two close kindred meet, what better than call a dance? Maybe the moon may learn, tired of that courtly fashion, a new dance turn. Minnaloushe creeps through the grass from moonlit place to place. The sacred moon overhead has taken a new phase. Does Minnaloushe know that his pupils will pass from change to change, and that from round to crescent, from crescent to round they range? Minnaloushe creeps through the grass, alone, important and wise, and lifts to the changing moon his changing eyes. My bookmarks seem to have slipped. Well, maybe that was all I had picked out. Well, that's good. 40 minutes is good enough for a reading. There is more Yeats. I don't know that I will jump right into it. Oh, here's one that I missed. An Irish airman foresees his death. I know that I shall meet my fate somewhere among the clouds above. Those that I fight, I do not hate. Those that I guard, I do not love. My country is Kiltartan Cross. My countrymen, Kiltartans poor. No likely end could bring them loss or leave them happier than before. Nor law nor duty bade me fight, nor public men, nor cheering crowds. A lonely impulse of delight drove to this tumult in the clouds. I balanced all, brought all to mind. The years to come seemed waste of breath, a waste of breath the years behind, in balance with this life, this death. Somewhere up on this site, I have a paired reading of that poem with a poem that I wrote for a Czech airman. If I think of it, I will put it into a link to it in the description box. Well, let me close with the one that I passed up. It was too long, I felt, but it's a very, very well-known poem as well. Of course, we cannot escape our present realities. We have to face them. And I think choice words help us to face them. The Stolen Child. Where dips the rocky highland of Sleuthwood in the lake, there lies a leafy island where flapping herons wake the drowsy water rats. There we've hid our fairy vats full of berries and of reddest stolen cherries. Come away, O human child, to the waters and the wild, with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than you can understand. Where the wave of moonlight glosses the dim gray sands with light, far off by furthest Rosses, we foot it all the night, weaving olden dances, mingling hands and mingling glances, till the moon has taken flight. To and fro we leap and chase the frothy bubbles, while the world is full of troubles and is anxious in its sleep. Come away, O human child, to the waters and the wild, with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than you can understand. Where the wandering water gushes from the hills above Glen Car, in pools among the rushes that scarce could bathe a star, we seek for slumbering trout, and whispering in their ears, give them unquiet dreams, leaning softly out from ferns that drop their tears over the young streams. Come away, O human child, to the waters and the wild, with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than you can understand. Away with us he's going, the solemn-eyed. He'll hear no more the lowing of the calves on the warm hillside, or the kettle on the hob sing peace into his breast, or see the brown mice bob round and round the oatmeal chest. For he comes, the human child, to the waters and the wild, with a fairy hand in hand, from a world more full of weeping than he can understand. William Butler Yeats, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for stopping by my channel.